Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we have another really interesting masterclass for you. I'm delighted to introduce Pankaj Paul, Managing Editor of Knowledge at Wharton, University of Pennsylvania. He is an expert in communication and media and will deliver this masterclass, Change is the Normal, the Evolving Face of News. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up this afternoon. I think the last session before the day ends is usually the most difficult one. So I'll do my best to keep you all awake. I don't know about the expert part. I just have had the opportunity and the good fortune to have worked at some great media organizations in 2 or 3 different countries. So I have seen a lot of different things. But one of the things I've noticed is that most audiences, news audiences around the world, are essentially the same. So having said that, not sure if you guys realize that this is a class, so there will be a quiz at the end. Are you all ready? No? Okay, that's all right. So let's start by saying, clearly, journalism, just over the last 4 or 5 years, has changed dramatically. One of the biggest changes that has come is the advent of digitization. So from a digitization perspective, one of the things that is essentially modifying everything that's happening is data. So data you can find it everywhere, right? You can find it in the number of tweets that you send, the number of cups of coffee you drink, or the amount of sugar you put in your coffee. Data is data. It's essentially breaks boundaries. It goes across different sections of society. So I say this to warn you that my presentation and this discussion is very data heavy, because that's what's driving journalism, old-fashioned journalism, and new media as well. So just in the time that we have been making this opening statement, this is what's happened. So I don't know how many of you were tweeting while we were talking, but if you look at the amount of data that's created in just 1 single minute, just imagine what it takes to process this information. Now you have to make sense of this information, right? You cannot, if there is 100 gigabytes of data being created in 1 single minute, how are you supposed to break down that information, not only to provide an understanding for yourself, but also for your audience? And it's about the audience, right? In the end, this is content. Everything is content. The number one book that sells on Amazon is content. The person who tweets that information about that book is content. The person who provides an opinion about that book at the end of a user review is content. How many of you, I'm sure all of you do it, I don't even need to ask a question. We all, whenever we are looking at any new piece of experience, a book, a movie, buying a new car, you go and you look at information about that particular product, and you see what other people have said about it. In the old days, you had to find that information in a newspaper. Slowly, that information became available on a website. But in the end, it's still information. It's just now available in a different fashion. So this is what, multiply this by a 12-hour news cycle, and you can imagine that this is what you have to do every single day as a news media person. You're supposed to find ways, you're supposed to find that one needle in the haystack of 5 million tweets that go out every single day for a particular topic. So this is what we're dealing with. So I'll start by sharing some information with you about how different audiences break down and what kind of things they do, and then we can take it forward from that point. And any questions you have, please don't hesitate to ask. Rather than being just me talking about it for the next hour, rather you get an opportunity to speak as well. So there are very distinct generations of media, and that's what has resulted in the fragmentation of media. Now, this is not, a lot of my information sources are from the US, just because I happen to live and work there. However, the breakdown of a generation is the same the worldwide. It's not different in the US or in Kazakhstan or any place else in the world. So more and more people are experiencing news and information a very different way. So one of the biggest thing is that younger people, a lot of you fall into the millennial generation, you are looking at news and information a very, very different way, which creates additional challenges for the news sources, which means that we have to modify the delivery of this news and information a different way. So, trust in media is going down. Let's be honest, let's admit it, let's agree to it, let's find a way to move forward, let's find a way to do something else with it, because this is not working, simply. Here are reasons why people trust information, and here are reasons why people don't trust information. First and foremost, the critical reason still remains the same. They trust a news source. When you're going looking for a piece of information, trust is still 85% of people polled, and this is an aggregation of different surveys that have been done on news readers and consumers around the world. Trust is still number one. And you can scroll down all the way. People who experience news, and this is a very specific subset, people who go to Facebook to get news, only 12% of those users say that they trust Facebook as a source because they don't know where it came from. That's the reason why. There's no other reason. So over the years, this massive shift in media, it's happening every single year. It's almost like every single year brings a generational shift in the way consumers view news. So you can look at these charts. I mean, these speak more than 1,000 words. You can see how the kinds of information experienced by people in different places is changing. This is a fascinating piece. So it might be a little difficult to read, but I'll walk you through this. So the darker reds are the darker the red, the higher the trust. One of the things you can see that general media like ABC News or CNN tends to rank much higher in trust than, say, something like sort of the more right-wing news media organizations in the US. So these are mostly on cable TV. So you can see they are more distrusted than trusted. The fascinating piece here is that you can see how all those entities that people say are dying are still the most trusted sources for information around the world. Clearly, there are some subsets that haven't had enough information. For example, you can see that Al Jazeera shows up, but unfortunately, The Guardian didn't show up. So if X number of people don't speak about that in the survey, the results are just simply thrown out. But it's just clear to see. Everything from USA Today, Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, NBC, MSNBC, Google, all the sort of the traditional news media sources are still the ones that are the most trusted. There's a lot of conversation about how the messaging of the media is being moved away generally from traditional old media to, say, a blogger or somebody who gets this information. Unfortunately, the data doesn't bear that out. It might be true in some subsets of society, some kinds of news, some time of the week, some time of the day, some day in a month, but generally, by and large, this is what holds true. No surprises there. Each of you has a smartphone. Some of you have more than one smartphone. You can see where the generational shift is. But as a news media organization, this creates a very serious challenge, right? So we have to find a way to reach the 55-plus audience, while at the same time catering to the 18 to 24 audience. The news doesn't change. The delivery mechanism changes. The way we look at information changes. And that's where some of the breakdowns are happening. So now just speaking just about millennials. So you can see how millennials on the left, you can see where they get their political information. I broke this down into a subset because some of this information becomes very generalized. You can have similar surveys for sports. You can have similar surveys for entertainment news. By and large, this doesn't change. This stays the same. These are only people who have expressed a desire to get this news, not the general population. This is a self-selecting group of people. So this is weird, right? So you can see that online search engines are now the most trusted, and yet they get the information from traditional media. Search engines don't create content. Media creates content. But more people are finding news via Google than they are on your particular websites. At one of the newspapers I worked for in the US, 30% of the online traffic came via Google. Only 12% came via the homepage. So the traditional homepage of a newspaper in most instances is dead. It doesn't matter anymore. It's just a mechanism, it's just a landing place for people to come to from a search engine. And studies like this bear this out. Why does the shift happen? The shift happens because people stop seeing value in something, right? Why do you stop buying a particular brand of ice cream? Or why do you stop driving a particular brand of cars? Why do you buy a particular kind of phone? Because of the trust you place in it. News as a product is losing value with its consumers. Millennials are still slightly more hopeful in 2015. Still about 30% of them do it, but you can see that the boomers and Gen X are essentially kind of disheartened by the news cycle. So this, again, creates a challenge for the kinds of news and information that we have everywhere. I wanted to show this just as an example. I understand most of you may not be familiar, but my hope is that almost everybody has heard of Donald Trump. Okay. Hillary Clinton? Great. So that answers my question. So the dark green are the Republicans. Republicans, by and large, as a group, again, these are people who have self-selected, who are saying, I'm a Republican, and yes, I will participate in this survey. Only 27%, or the numbers actually become even lower. I think it's 23 now. So about 20-odd% of them trust the media because they think that this sort of this echo chamber that they create. So that's the beauty of the internet, right? You can go find validation for your own viewpoint. Doesn't matter what the viewpoint is. You will find people among the 6.8 billion of us around this world. You will find people that agree with their viewpoint. So if you're the kind of person who likes chocolate ice cream and you only want green sprinkles in it and you only want it in a yellow cup and that's the only way you'll have ice cream, well, you know what, you'll find somebody else who does the exact same thing. But Republicans, by and large, don't trust what the media is doing. They don't trust what the media is telling them. They believe that things are going wrong, horribly wrong in the US. That's why you see this Trump phenomena happening in the US. Democrats, by and large, tend to think that the world is okay. Things are not going that badly. So their numbers in the last 20-odd years have only jumped up and down about 10%. When things get better, they will go up again. But again, this is a function of the information that people perceive when they read your news articles. It doesn't matter what you write. Every time you write something, they're judging you. Judging on the way you've written it, judging on the information that you've provided to them, judging on the amount of time you put in and effort you put into this. Just to follow up for that. So again, liberals tend to be, mostly tend to be Democrats, conservatives almost entirely tend to be Republicans. There are some people who go into the Tea Party and other pieces like that. So I promise this is the last slide of the US elections, but it just seems like it is this fascinating experiment that's going on in the US right now, which is providing a lot of data for a lot of research for a lot of academics. So they only trust one news source, and they don't trust anything else. Liberals, on the other hand, trust a lot more different kinds of news sources. Again, these are echo chambers that you have created for yourself. You're going out and you are finding people like you, and those people are believing what you're doing, and they're telling you, yes, this is the right thing to do, and you're going back and you're reading the same source again. All right, so let's move to journalists and see, all of us are guilty in some ways of doing specific things and saying specific things. So the question is, this was one study that was very critical, essentially looked at what journalists are doing themselves. Right? A lot of us complain about, well, there are bad things happening on social media, people who, terrible things, I don't trust the social media. Well, so in this rush to be first without verifying information is one of the biggest challenges we face right now. The trust in the news media is being eroded because the information that people are finding online in your news organizations is inaccurate at times. So 45% said they want to be first. They want to break news first. They want the scoop first. They want to do it first. That doesn't help, right? Because more often than not, you ended up correcting that piece of information. And yet, you have sent that information out to all your readers. And the readers are looking at this, and they're coming back to it. So it's sort of this dichotomy wherein we are complaining about other people providing false information, and yet we are not averse to doing it ourselves. So this was refreshing. At least half of the people polled said that, yeah, they go look for this right answer. They go talk to other people before they publish this information. But that still means about half of them don't do it the right way. Again, this contributes to this trust notion, and it's just being driven by this race for news. Half of the journalists consider social media consumer, people, ordinary people's opinion on social media to be more reliable. Just imagine what a generational shift this has been. In the old days, you had to go to the organization to get the right information. But again, trust in organizations is also eroded to a point where even journalists are saying that they would rather read or listen to somebody else's opinion than the entity themselves. And you can see how journalists feel, 2/3 of journalists feel that social media has modified the way information is disseminated. That's a significant number. This study is from last year. So this is how much this methodology of dissemination is changing the way we, as journalists, provide information. It's a frightening statistic, right? So you act differently on social media than you do in your regular media. I mean, as journalists, I don't think you have a choice. You are bound by the same rules, same ethical guidelines that exist in your traditional medium as they do in social media, and yet people are still modifying that behavior. They're still changing the way they're looking at it. They're still doing things that we complain about people doing on social media. We're saying, oh, people are just providing false information. Yeah, well, then what about you? Are you doing the same thing? Well, it seems like, at least for the people who took part in the survey, 60% are saying, yeah, we did. We act differently. We do things differently. So, sorry, this is a consequence of this, right? Less bound by journalistic rules. Consequence of that is that you're expressing yourself differently on social media. This applies, again, you can generalize it to a certain extent, right? But things are clearly different than the way they were earlier. Social media is modifying our own behavior as far as news gathering and dissemination is concerned. So this is generally, I'm sure this is true for almost all of you. This is what journalists say that they are doing on social media, and this is how they're experiencing it. So I'm sure 78 is probably low. I think all of you are doing a little bit more than that. Everybody is. But 68% also say that the industry cannot work without it. So essentially, social media is critical for the survival of the news media industry. Not just as an individual journalist, but as your organization. So you believe, as a whole, that that's what holds true. But half of them also say that this has reduced the importance of traditional media. So it's going both ways, right? Some of these things are very frustrating to news managers because you are saying one thing, you are doing the other thing, but then you're saying both those things are true. Right is right, but wrong is right as well. So it becomes very difficult to sort of manage the process for this to move forward. You can find a lot of these numbers on the web. You can look at them. This is all publicly available information. So this is what the new news cycle has turned into. This is across platforms, TV, organizations that just tend to exist on social media, newspapers, online news organization. Essentially, this is what's happening now. So news is breaking on social media platforms. More often than not, it's breaking on Twitter. Now, slowly, it's beginning to break on Facebook as well. So Google Plus, anything, there'll be others, Instagram, WhatsApp, WeChat, pick one or pick all. It's happening everywhere. But the context is being provided by hashtags. I mean, more often than not, people are using, hashtag interesting or hashtag breaking news in conversation. That's how a lot of people are beginning to speak to each other because it's become a verb now. That's the way you provide context. So the analysis piece is getting less frequent. But essentially, that's what's become. This is how almost every major major and minor news organization, this is how they're playing. There is no other way to do it. Because if you're not going to be participating in the process that people are partaking of, so if you're not going to be where your audience is, your audience will never find out what you did. But this is that whole, like, tree in the forest, right? If a tree fell in the forest and nobody was there to see it, did it actually fall? I don't know. You'll have to go see it, right? So if you didn't go see it, you don't know whether it fell or not. So that's what's happening here. If you're not going to be where your audience is, that becomes a very challenging situation for you. And this is why we are modifying our own behavior as an industry. So perhaps I don't have to answer this. Any of you can answer it. Anybody think of a journalist differently now? I mean, you're in some way connected with the news media in one fashion or the other. Who do you think is a journalist now? Is it a person who went to school, went for training, spent time in a news organization, or your neighbor who just happened to see the car crashing while you were at work and tweets a picture out in like 10 seconds? That definition is becoming more and more challenging. So for people who are not traditionally considered journalists, when they are providing news and information, are they journalists themselves? Honestly, at this point, there isn't any answer to that. I think that people who have been through the rigor of that training to be a journalist clearly tend to think differently. They tend to think of this as a profession, as a calling, as something that you need to learn and train for. And that's how they're trying to position themselves, while others are essentially saying no. So social media has essentially modified the whole content creation and dissemination model for us. So whether we like it or not, news breaks, but news breaks at the speed of sound. You can tweet, you can send a text message, you can put it on WhatsApp. It doesn't matter what it is. You need to send it out right away. That's how the news media has been completely, the model, the delivery mechanism has been completely changed. Secondly, we're using we're using social media more and more to connect with our audience, right? So you know your people are on Twitter, you know your people are on WhatsApp, you know how to reach your audience. So you're connecting with them more directly, more efficiently, more quickly. So that's the second way that this is changing. So to go back to the first question about who's a journalist, so I think not just me, a lot of people tend to agree with that, is that the professional journalist, right? The trained individual is becoming the gate, or whichever adjective you want to add to it. It's being changed. So you may end up being just the gatekeeper. You will see that flood of 10 gigabytes of data. You'll see those 100,000 tweets coming through, and you will have to sift through them to find the right information. You will sift through them and you'll say, you know what, out of these 100 things that people are talking about, this one thing is true. So you become so then you take that one piece and then you go back to the model that you go back to this model and you look at how you provide context for that breaking news. So you become researchers. Henceforth, all this data, because we are living and dying by data. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that's what the reality is right now. If you're unable to sift through that information, you are unable to provide the information for your audiences. So whether you think you're participating in this process or not, you are. This is what it is. You may look at it differently, you may call it different things, you may experience it differently, you may be only in the breaking news team, you may be only in the research team, but more and more professional journalists are turning into researchers. We are the one who go and provide context, we go and check what the real information is, we try to see what's happening, we say, okay, if you said a plane crashed, I'm going to go see whether we'll send a photographer, we'll send a reporter, whatever it is. So you will qualify that breaking news with reality, right? You will go and you'll get that information and you will try to sort of figure out whether that piece, the plane crash, was true or not. So just a quick ethics training piece, right? Clearly, you've learned this in school. You've learned this on your job. This has not changed. You can't just because somebody tweeted something out, you cannot just ship it over, right? In the old days, just because somebody called in, sent an email saying such and such thing happened, well, no, verify it. That's the first thing you do as a journalist. If you don't know whether this is a way to do it, you don't know whether you should be retweeting that piece of information, always consult a team member. Collective responsibility is always better. You can find a way. You can have a team source. You can have a person who you can check the information with. The follow-up online piece, that has been a traditional journalism character. It will remain the same. It was, is, and will remain the same, right? You have to follow up. You have to follow up to see whether the news and information that you heard about is true or not. Pictures. Almost everybody knows how to use Photoshop, right? You know what you can do in Photoshop, right? You see those viral memes going through your Facebook feed every single day. They're all fake, right? So because Princess Diana is not an astronaut, she's not going to be in SpaceX, and the two-headed dog that ate the 70-foot python is really not true. The latest one I heard was a python who ate an alligator who was then eaten by another python. There were pictures of this, right? All fake. 9 times out of 10, because of this need for speed, you tend not to check. Pictures are the most difficult pieces that we are dealing with as gatekeepers right now. So please be very, very mindful of how this can impact you. And then this should be clear to everybody. If it's not, I'll say this again, and you can take it as gospel. There is no privacy on the web. Doesn't matter what anybody says to you. You put some information on the web, they will find out. If you have the secret bank account in Panama, they will find out. If you posted a picture somewhere that you didn't, they will find out. Somebody will find out. So please don't put any information that you believe will be harmful to your audience or to you or to your organization. It's just there simply isn't, there's no concept of privacy. You can have the best cybersecurity mechanism. Unfortunately, people are finding ways to break through it. Online sources. Now, this has been a subject of some debate in the US at least. So the person who tweeted the first piece of information, should that be considered on the record, even though it says Joe Smith 23 at whatever? Well, yeah, there. Because if you're going to put it in a news story, it's an on-the-record thing. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, they are virtual public places. This is the equivalent of going out into a bazaar or into a church or into a supermarket and talking to people. It's a virtual space. It's a public space. Conversations are being had, so those conversations are relevant and important for you as news gatherers and news disseminators. And of course, shouldn't have to say this, but apparently you have to say this in every class and every seminar. Consider the legal implications of what you do. If you retweet something, okay, if you're Mr. Trump, then you don't have to bother with this, right? You have lawyers. Because if you anyways. So consider the legal implication. If you put a piece of information, you retweet it, it becomes yours. If you are ABC News Organization, right, you got something from Joe Smith and you retweeted it, it becomes part of abcnews.com. You are legally liable for that information, so you have to be considered. And then in the end, unless and until you're writing an op-ed piece or you're an opinion journalist, you are just reporting the facts. It's important to sort of be impartial. It's important to sort of get both sides of the story. It's important to talk to more than one source, and it's important to provide context for what you're trying to do for your audience. So I just wanted to pause for a second, see if you guys had any questions. Is there any other information I can provide? Is there any context I can provide for this? Because this is something that a lot of news organizations struggle with because they think that the rules should be different because of the digitization of content. The answer is they are not. The rules are still the same, the game is still the same, it's maybe played a different way, but nothing has changed. Here are a few relatively new tools that I wanted to share with you. They can be helpful in helping you look for that needle in the haystack. So Geophidia is pretty cool. It allows you to segregate and aggregate content based on a geographic location. So for example, you can get, you can find all the tweets about a forest fire in a specific location. Signal, especially if you can get access to feeds, Signal allows you to search Facebook and Instagram. Excuse me. So that's very critical. When you're trying to sift through information, you're in a rush. That's a very, very good. Neighborhood Buzz is very new. I don't know if it's made its way around the world yet, but Neighborhood also similar to Geophidia, but if that's only works if you know what the neighborhood is, right? If you can say, I'm looking for this section of a city, it allows you to segregate and isolate Twitter messages. And if your news organizations have a few bucks to spend, both Spike and Dataminr are incredible platforms, amazingly good. They allow you to sift through all kinds of information from all kinds of platforms, very, very powerful. These are both industrial strength tools. In fact, Dataminr has an obscene amount of funding from security agencies in the US. There's another one called Palantir, which does more technical stuff, but these two So the news monitoring piece is important, right? Because if you say, for example, the refugee crisis, if you happen to be in Greece and you're trying to get a handle on what's happening with the refugees, you can use data miner to create these information source feeds that'll allow you to monitor that information. So anytime something new happens, you'll get alerted. So essentially, it's push mechanism rather than you trying to find that source information. Just want to pause. Any questions, any comments? You all, please.
My name is Babit. I'm working in National Art Gallery. And first of all, I would like to thank you for your masterclass. And I have a couple of questions. First, nowadays we have a huge amount of information, as you told at the beginning of your presentation, right? And what we have to choose, because online news, it's like Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, it's like social media, and then like a TV news. So what the site, what we have to choose, what the site we have to choose, online, or what we have to prefer, online, social media's news, or TV news? And my second question is, as an expert in your case, in your deal, what we, just could you tell me the first question, and after that, could you tell me that first question, and just answer it, and then I will ask the second question, okay?
Sure. I just wanted to point out that I just want to pause, but there's a few things more I wanted to tell you about after we answer the question. I just wanted to pause before we move into a new news model that I want to share with you that has found a lot of success around the world, a different way of doing news. So going back to your question, so which is important? Well, they're all.
What's the site we have to choose, online or TV news? Because it's a part of different, right?
It is hard to differentiate, and the reason why that is hard to differentiate is because different people experience news differently. What works for me definitely doesn't work for you. So, given a choice, I would go to a source of information that I trust. That's what I always do. And over the years, I've found ways that I can sift through information. So if I want to see what my friends are saying about a particular movie, I go to Facebook because I want to see what my group is talking about a specific news information. If I want a breaking news checked out, I will go perhaps to a specific website. So essentially there are no rules anymore on where you're going to get the information. You get the information wherever you are comfortable. The challenge lies on the news media to essentially provide that information to you.
And my second question, it's very curious for me. How did you get that this kind of information, that presentation? Did you do some research, or did you find it, that information via Google?
Well, you have to start with Google, right? Where else are you going to go? No, I don't know. I enjoy this kind of stuff, right? I enjoy this kind of information. I have the privilege of going to different places and talking about how the news media is changing. So I am always curious and always looking for new information. Some of this information has come from online sources. Other has come from my friends and colleagues who are in the same field, and we share information back and forth. So it's an aggregation of a few weeks worth of research.
Okay, thank you.
So just want to check. So, right, you've all heard of that famous phrase, right? The revolution will be televised. Well, in our case, is it being televised? Yes. Is it being tweeted? Yes. Is it being Instagram? Yes. Is it being Facebook, Google? I don't know. WhatsApp, WeChatted, and something else. We don't know. Many years ago, I still remember that I was given the responsibility of creating a strategy for this something called MySpace. Anybody heard of MySpace? That was Facebook when Facebook was not Facebook, right? And we were all going crazy. my bosses were just completely losing it. Oh my goodness, if we are not on Facebook, we will die, right? And by the time we figured out the Facebook strategy, something else would have come up. It's same thing. I have hundreds of pages of documents about MySpace, hundreds. I have thousands of emails about MySpace. And then one day, MySpace vanished. And then Facebook came. And then Twitter came. And then Instagram came. Now, if I want to reach the Chinese market, I have to be on WeChat. WeChat operates almost like Facebook, almost like WhatsApp, but maybe not. So so what you need is a content strategy, right? You don't need a platform strategy. So what happened? What's happened in the last 20 years? What's happening every month? Has the content changed? No, the content has not changed. It's content is still content. It's still the same thing. The news is still news. Information is still information. The platform has changed? Absolutely. We've gone from X to Y to Z to the next new thing that somebody's coming up on. And the technology has changed. So just this morning, there was a news article that I was reading that I had wanted to share with you. Unfortunately, I can't pull it up over here. So each one of you has one of these devices, right? And that you're in love with, that you can't live without, because if you try to let go of it, your heart rate starts to increase, blood pressure drops, right? All kinds of stuff. You can't walk straight. So this morning, the news was that the smartphone is like TV now. We have plateaued in design, technology, and delivery. This is it. 2016 was the peak of smartphone designs. What does this guy base it on? Because he bought an iPhone 6. Then he went to go get an iPhone 6 SE and said, oh my goodness, this is too boring for me. So we can keep modifying this. I mean, all of us get news and information on this. Some people like me who are, getting older by the second, we prefer a larger screen because eyes don't focus the right way. You get astigmatism and you're like, what the heck is that word saying, right? All kinds of stuff. Anyways, the technology will keep modifying, right? There's a Moore's principle that a singular modified chip doubles in speed and reduces in half in size in every iteration. Some friends and I were talking this morning about something called a floppy disk. A floppy disk used to have 64 kilobytes of data. We used to feel like kings. You could almost put one page of text on it. It was amazing. And then now you have a 64 gigabyte flash drive, and you're looking at this, I need more. This is not enough for me. And this has happened in the last 20 years. It's just so technology will keep modifying, technology will keep challenging us as we move forward. So is the news bad? And is it bad for you? Both are yes, by the way. The answer is yes. There's an actual study that said journalists who were covering war, they got post-traumatic stress disorder by just watching and reporting the news. And this is happening to a lot of young people, by the way. This is a real issue in newsrooms for a lot of people who are covering the news. There's this famous comedian in the US, Jon Stewart, who had this show called The Daily Show. It was a comedy satire show. And he quit at the peak of his career because he said he just couldn't bear to watch the news every day. So the news is bad. It is all bad for you. Unfortunately, a boss is not going to send you to a doctor to have you do this because he or she still wants you to work. So we can't change bad news, right? We can't change terrorism. We can't change the refugee crisis. We cannot change desperate people in terrible situations who want to make a better life for themselves. They get on this rickety boat from the northern coast of northern Africa and they drown. You can't change any of that. So what are we supposed to do? So some organizations have been experimenting this with positive news. There are different ways, different names of calling it. You can call it whatever you like. essentially, it's news of a different kind. Now, this is, again, real data. These are real numbers. This has happened. So the big piece here was not just the traffic, but the amount of referrals that they were getting for that traffic, right? That's important. That means that more and more people wanted their friends and their family to see that news. Also another thing, this was a year-long project that they looked at. So what ends up happening is we go to a school, right? We say the school is terrible, it has termites, the teachers are all drunk, the building is broken, and then we leave. Right? Because that's the news, that was the news of the day, we covered it, we move forward. But clearly people don't want just that, right? People want you as responsible citizens and members of society and members of their own community to help find solutions as well. So Seattle Times did this experiment looking at different things that schools were doing to improve. And that's what changed. That's what changed their perception of the newspaper. Very large media market, by the way, like almost 200,000 people every Sunday read the Seattle Times. So what is this good news journalism? What is this constructive news? So what is it? So here are some broad rules, right? These don't apply to everything, but I'm just going to give you a broad sense of how things have worked for other people. First of all, the problem sometimes can be as minute as what your neighbor is going through to as significant as saying that our school system is failing. That's the first thing to do. The second thing is, what's the cause? Well, the cause is the schools don't have funding, the schools don't have good teachers, the schools don't have X or Y. So those are two key components of this. And you need to go and find something that worked for someone, right? Every single school in the world is not failing. Every single school in your region is not failing, in your country is not failing, in another country is not failing. People talk about schools in Scandinavian countries and how great they are and how well they do with the system. You can find a solution if you look for it. And this is what you do. You're researchers, right? This is your job. So then, that's the first step. The second step is then you look at it. What's the cause? What's happening there? Again, you're an investigator, you're a researcher, that's the first thing you're doing. You're finding the cause. Then, if you're going to go ahead with a story, are you providing a solution? Or are you saying, we went to the school, we found a burning school, and we came back. Here's a beautiful picture of a burning school. Good luck to you, don't call us. No, you have to find a response. Then you have to find, how did that response come about? So you're essentially prosecuting this information in a whole, cradle to grave kind of stuff. Start with the issue, go to the response, go to how this happened. Is the solution that you're suggesting exists? Our schools will get better if we have better teachers. That's not enough, right? What is a better teacher? How do you define a better teacher? How will you get the better teacher? So those things have to be, it is your responsibility to find that. Trust me, this is not easy, right? Because we're not used to sort of pausing and trying to find this way. But this works. It's working and has been working. So going back to finding the good teachers, right? Okay, why can't we find good teachers? Then you have to go find the causes on what that reason. What are the limitations? Limitations are, it's a bad neighborhood, they don't get paid well, they have all left Kazakhstan and they've gone to Canada. Or they've gone to Florida because Kazakhstan was too cold. What's the underlying cause? What's happening? Why are they doing it? So you have to find that as well. And then in the end, is there a teachable lesson? Is there a master class in your story somewhere? How is this happening? What are you going to do? How are you going to solve that problem for me? So those are some of the fundamental reasons and some of the key identifiers to look for in one of these solution journalism-oriented pieces. Here are the results. Again, I can make everything up, I can't make data. Well, you can make data up, but not that much. So you can see the difference. I feel inspired or optimistic after reading. 2/3 more people said that. They would read your newspaper again. That's significant. They would like to be involved because you're finding solutions for communities and they would share the article. In every single key points, people said that this was something that they appreciated. Nobody's suggesting that you stop covering breaking news, right? Nobody's suggesting that you stop writing about car accidents, to refugee crises, to economic crisis, to terrorism. That's not the point. The point is that that's not all that you do. You do a lot of different things, and this is just one of the many things that the news media is experimenting with and has been a success in this fashion. Thank you for your time. We're a little bit quicker. I didn't want to sort of keep you awake that long, but please, questions. Yeah?
Вопрос.
Question. You have said that the platforms, technologies have changed, but the content has not changed.
На одном слайде.
There was one slide about it,
Хотел бы
but I want
где-то не согласиться.
to express my disagreement, because platforms, technologies have also changed, it's obvious, and the content has also changed, as I think. If you take the Instagrams, the YouTube, Facebook, they provide a new form of content. First of all, fan videos from the places of events happening. Journalists do it. Journalists don't manage to do it. And, for instance, it's a primitive thing, maybe selfies. It's a kind of content which takes 50-60% in Facebook, in Instagram. Maybe it's somehow a primitive and foolish type of content, but anyway, it's a content. Can you make any comment?
So, first of all, it's not primitive, right? Content is content. So a video as a piece of data is the same on Facebook as it is on Russia Today, just for the... That doesn't change. A video is a video, an audio file is an audio file, a text is a text, so a tweet is a tweet. So that fundamental process has not changed. Sure, the quality of a video shot by a fan at a Manchester United game may not be as great as what's done by a professional photographer. However, if he or she, the fan, was the only one to capture that one great goal by, I don't know, Andy Rooney, for the sake of discussion, and the ESPN guy wasn't able to do it, what would you place more value on? The fan video, right? You will not care about ESPN because you got that great goal by the soccer player, by this fan. So broadly, if you look at it, it's still all the same thing. I personally don't think it's any different. I don't consider the value of a good sports video by a fan shot on even if it's a BlackBerry for that matter, I don't consider it to be any different than something being shot by a professional photographer, especially if the fan got the right piece of news. So this has made these great devices have sort of equalized the field. So each one of us can be a news gatherer, and each one of us can be a news disseminator. So that's why I don't think content has changed. But thank you. It's an interesting question. Please.
I'm a master student of IR, and first of all, let me thank you for your indeed thought-provoking presentation. I have two questions. The first one is related mostly to methodological issues, and my question is, to what extent do Twitter posts are representative of online population on the one hand and offline population on the other hand? Put it differently, me as a researcher who is particularly interested in public sentiments, for instance, regarding a specific topic, might come across with problems of bots presence, in the Twitter, for instance, or the absence of hashtags of the post that might be crucial to my survey or my research. And my second question is, do you agree or disagree that dissemination of knowingly false information should lead to administrative or criminal punishment? Thank you.
So I'll do the second one first. Yes, if you're providing false information under the guise of that it's real, sure, you should be prosecuted. The media is prosecuted. We get hit with these lawsuits all the time. And I think that if you as an individual, a private citizen, are trying to do the same thing, the same rules should apply to you. Clearly, the mechanism of delivering that punishment, so to speak, or administrative action can be different or difficult, but yes, by far, absolutely. Too many people with too many smartphones are wandering around in too many places for this not to be real. And Photoshop keeps getting better and better, every single version. So yeah, so that's the second. So as far as, so your question related to what kind of data that you can source. So that's a funny thing, right? So as researchers, we can go find, we can do one or two things. Either you can find data that validates your view. So more, let me back up. I would suggest not having a preconceived notion before going and addressing a problem. I think you should go address a problem. Why do people like the color yellow? One way of looking at it. Second way of looking at it is, which is the most popular color? The first question may have an inherent element of bias in it, because you're saying why is X equals Y, right? Why is yellow more popular? So that question can be perceived of as being inherently tilted towards the color yellow. But if you're looking at, again, democratizing your question, you're just saying, what is this happening? I think that's a better way to approach it, although I think it's a more difficult way to approach it. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Today, I'm Yulia Nazarova. I'm the press service of Eurasian Economic Commission. In speaking, you talked about errors which are committed by journalists in their publications. We, as an organization, quite often face that when people write about us, about the commission, errors happen, about our job positions, about some other things. Is it good then to request to eliminate the errors? And such errors happen, and they are found in media.
Without a doubt, it doesn't matter what the error is. Even if it's not an error, even if it's a perceived inaccuracy that you believe exists in a specific publication or in a specific news article, it's your right to go and challenge that information. I think that, so I'll give you an example that's happening right now. So in my, Knowledge at Wharton is the academic journal of the Wharton School, which is, considered the best business school in the world. So we published a story about an entrepreneur from Africa. So he's part of a large organization that are buying land in Africa to create these massive farms. So essentially buying land for small farmers, converting into these massive farms. So there is a group that's protesting against this action. So they wrote an email to us this morning saying, this is outrageous. You should not be giving this man a platform because what he's doing is terrible. Okay, fine. So this group feels that this large multinational organization buying hundreds and thousands of acres of land to convert them into big farms is wrong. So they wrote us an email. So we looked at the facts that they had presented and we responded to them. And we responded and said, this has nothing to do with him buying land. We are talking to him about strategy, about operations, about how his company is working. But we responded. And I think every single news media organization should respond. And if the news media organization doesn't respond, I'm sure that there is some media oversight authority. There is an ombudsman in some instances. that should respond. So ostensibly, you should be able to get an answer for your question and get resolution for your unhappiness, whether it agrees, whether in the end it agrees with you or not. So in this, the example that I just gave you, the group in Kenya did not agree with our response. But that's what the facts were. And so we didn't play with the facts, we kept it straight down the middle, and we told them what we had done. They're not happy, but there's nothing else that we can do about this. So yes, you should ask for resolution, but you should also be prepared that occasionally you will not get the answers you seek. Okay. Please.
Hello, my name is Janar. I'm a chief head of Best News KZ. Thank you very much for your knowledge. I would like to ask several questions. What do you think? In what social media are the most successful for information agencies, for tweeting, for example, posting? And the second question, what do you think? How to teach our users to pay for the access to exclusive materials? If, for example, mass media wants to charge some materials, and so on.
So the answer to the first question on which medium is important, so I think that's an answer that you have to get from your audience. You essentially need to be where your audience is. If you believe that your audience sources information on Twitter, then you have to be on Twitter. The unfortunate problem is that we don't know, right? More often than not, we don't know where the audience is. So that's why we end up writing long-form stories, we end up writing tweets, we're rewriting pieces for Facebook, modifying a piece of information for Instagram. In the old days, we had to bother with Flickr and other things as well. So the workload for a regular journalist has actually increased substantially in the last 3 to 4 years, because you are expected to find the news, verify the news, disseminate the news right away, then go back and rewrite it. So a journalist in a US media organization right now does the following. First of all, they tweet the news. Secondly, they send out a text message about the news. Third, they write 2 paragraphs for Facebook. Then they write 2 paragraphs for the website. Then they go back and they verify the news, they add more information to it. Every time they get a new piece of information, they tweet. So in a breaking news story, by the end of the day, a journalist, a reporter, I'm not talking about an editor, a reporter could have sent out between 7 to 12 tweets, updated Facebook 4 to 5 times, shipped off information on Instagram on whatever picture he or she could find, updated the website half a dozen times, and then gotten ready to rewrite the story for the next day's newspaper. In the old days, you got the news, you wrote about it the whole day, and you published it the next morning, right? It was great. Then we went home. But that has all changed, and I don't think it's going to get modified. So I would monitor Twitter numbers. I would monitor your referrals from Facebook. I would see how many followers you have on Instagram. I would see how many people what kind of engagement you have on Facebook, to create a matrix or where your audience is and how you need to send that information to them. The second question about how can you monetize this? How can you make money by providing exclusive information? So here's the interesting point about that. If I knew the answer to that, I would be in an island in the Mediterranean, have a drink with a little colorful drink, umbrella in it, with a straw. We have not been able to crack that. Unfortunately, we haven't. Different people have been able to find different ways of making some money. Not a lot of money, some money. There are very different models. There is, of course, the pay model, right? You subscribe to my news site, one. Second is, I will only give you one paragraph of this information. If you want to read the rest of the story, you have to be a subscriber. There's one experiment that's going on in Chile, just south of Santiago, in a newspaper right now, wherein I'm sure all you journalists will enjoy this. Journalists are paid on the number of clicks their stories get. So it's like 2 cents per click. If you write 100 stories and you get 10 clicks, you're getting 20 cents. If you write a story and you get 200,000, you're getting $20,000. So we're all trying different mechanisms right now. Unfortunately, there isn't. The one piece that I would tell you about is, one example is about the New York Times. The New York Times now has more digital subscribers than print subscribers. However, the New York Times quality, the amount of content that they create is substantial. So people come for content, people pay for the content, and people are willing to come back and tell other people about that. But for most sites, best you can hope for is exclusivity. One, you break more exclusive news. Secondly, your audience begins to trust you based on that news. Third, you can find some small ways of introducing pay models to it. Unfortunately, there is no one mechanism that will work. It just has, and it's not true, it's true for the US, it's true for Europe, it's true for Asia, it's true for Africa, it's true everywhere. It's just there isn't a single mechanism that works for everyone.
Thank you very much for the very informative presentation. You said that the platforms has changed, and absolutely that's true. My question is, what factors cause different societies use different applications or platforms? I guess you said that Chinese are using WeChat. Many people are using WhatsApp. In my country, Iran, it was Viber, and after a year it was WhatsApp, and sure. Now for the last year it has been Telegram, and even people now how to make money in Telegram. Interestingly, what factors are indicating that which application or which platforms people choose and how they use it? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. The answer lies in another masterclass. So there is a theory in academia. It's called the technology acceptance model, TAM. If you Google it, you can find it. There are thousands of studies conducted around the technology acceptance model that deals with exactly that. What makes a platform more successful in a specific geography with a specific subset of people when in other places it doesn't work, right? So the Chinese experiment is a really fascinating one, right? Right, everything from Weibo to WeChat, they have created their own platforms, and somehow those platforms have become more successful than the traditional Western. So most technology is flowing from the West to the East, right? More often than not, right? And you can look at anything. However, I think the Chinese success is amazing, and I think it's very comforting to me as just as a human being to say that there are more smart people in the world that can actually make things that will be accepted by a lot of people. So adoption of technology is a very fascinating subject but you know, how do you, so there is, sorry, so I'm going into my academia frame. I promise I'll walk away from it in a minute. So there are some things, there's a theory that talks about black swans. There's something called a black swan effect. So the internet is a black swan effect. Means that it will only come once in a lifetime. The September 11 incident in the US, also a black swan event, means that something like that is just not going to happen again. So in a lot of these things, so Facebook is now being considered one of a similar phenomena, that something like Facebook will only come once in our lifetimes. But then at the same time, we said the same thing about MySpace, right? Just a few years ago, we said MySpace is going to happen once in a lifetime. So adoption of technology is a very fascinating subject. It just, different rules apply to different geographies. However, it's clear that the Chinese experiment, maybe it was because of language, maybe it was because of national pride, maybe it was because it hit the right place at the right time. It's just absolutely fascinating. I just don't know whether we have the answer to that yet. So I'm sorry, I can't really answer the question that you asked, but I've given you more things to Google when you go back. And please Google them before you go back to Iran, because they may block them before you go, right? Please. Oh, sorry.
Hello, I represent site primeminister.kz. I am interested in the following question. So what development in Western countries was taken by GR, government relations? I'm talking about government relations. And can government websites fulfill the role of media? I'm talking about the connection between the government and public through different media.
Excellent question. And yes, absolutely. So traditionally, the news media has been the filter, right? We are the filter between the originator of the news and the dissemination of news. We would take the piece of news and we would decide whether this was newsworthy, whether this had enough implications for us to give it to our readership. So if you're a government entity or if you're a corporate entity, now clearly you want to put your own message out without the filter. And as far as political organizations are concerned and political offices are concerned, I think it's becoming more and more important for you to be able to provide your messaging directly to your audience. You have to engage the audience, right? That's the first thing. And secondly, you have to build trust. I don't know if you have heard about this example from ExxonMobil, this giant oil company that had this massive accident in southern US, and they essentially, they found a way to deliver their messaging which was essentially all false. And they spent tens of millions of dollars doing it. But truth has this funny way of coming out, right? You can only hide the truth for so long. So if you're able to create an engagement model, whether it's through social media, email newsletters, printed pamphlets, it doesn't matter what it is. You first of all need to connect with the audience. Your audience needs to realize, one, that you're willing to give information. Your audience also needs to realize that you need to realize, as a government entity, that if a member of the audience reaches out to you, you have to respond to them. If you respond to them, that builds trust. Everybody does it, right? Humans do it. Google does it. So Google has a reputation index. You can't just take your blog and put it on Google and expect it to show up on the front page of Google search. No, it takes time. So Google has an algorithm which is called reputation rank. So over the course of days, weeks, months, year, the reputation index of your blog, just for the sake of discussion, your blog continues to grow based on the activity that's associated with the blog. You have to do the same thing. So you have to find where your audience is, you have to connect with the audience, you have to engage with the audience, and you have to respond to the audience. And I will guarantee you that if you follow the same mechanisms that the news media follows to engage with the audience, you will get similar, if not better, results.
Good evening. Firstly, thank you very much for your masterclass. It was very informative and very useful. I have a question about blogging. As we know today, it's very popular, especially on Facebook. And sometimes bloggers think that they are more free than journalists, that they don't work for a corporation, don't work for a government, and so they are more journalists than the real journalists are. And I have a question. Tell us, please, what is the role of real blogging? Does it dedicated to replace the media, the work of journalists, or they have another role? And if they have another role, what is it? Thank you.
So this was 2006, or maybe 2006 or 2007. That's when this whole blogging phenomena exploded. But in any of the numbers I showed you, any of the researches, did you see a blog and blogger anywhere? No. The reason for that is that people figure out that the blogger is just the guy, some guy in his mom's basement, in his underwear, nothing better to do just to write stuff. And you could only trust him for so long. So it was this shiny little thing that everybody thought. In fact, the news media thought that this was very cool, right? We would fire all of you, and we'd have this guy write stories for us, and we'll pay him, I don't know, pennies. Never happened. It never panned out. Because the same fundamental rules apply to anyone. If you're going to play a journalist, then you have to be a journalist. You can call yourself blogger, you can call it. So think about it. You are all bloggers, right? What's the definition of a blogger? You're writing stuff for the internet. So what's a journalist then? A journalist is a blogger as well. But the blogger isn't necessarily a journalist. So my daughter, who's 14 now, has a food blog. And she wants to make a lot of money on it. She says she wants to be very, very rich. I said, okay, you can be very, very rich. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So in the last month, she has 500 page views. So she's very disappointed because she thinks that she should have Huffington Post-like blog. She's saying, my writing is better than the writing on Huffington Post. But the same rules of economics and management apply to her as well. She has to find the audience, she has to connect with the audience, she has to engage with the audience, and she has to deliver the right messaging to the audience. So I see nothing in any blogger. I mean, you are free to write in most countries and in most societies. You're free to write whatever you want. And at the same time, your audience, the authorities, and the local police are also free to do whatever they like to you, right? Because if you write something silly, there will be repercussions. I honestly have never come across any instance where I felt like blogging would be a challenge to the traditional news model, or whether blogging needed to be a different. I just happen to disagree with it. I just think blogging is just writing. You're just writing. You're a writer. Go for it. Good power, go write. So just giving you my daughter's example. So it's like, okay, write whatever you like, right? Here are certain rules that apply to you. And those are the same rules to apply to all of us as professional writers. So again, that just might be me, but I tend to disagree with that. So, one last thing.
Hello, my name is Aygerim. I wanted to ask the following question. Your information is very wonderful. I agree with the statistics, but I'm interested in black internet. Probably you heard about a black internet or shadow internet. Is it urgent today? So today, is everybody wants to read in a black internet? I know that Medusa, Russian website, they developed their sites based on a shadow internet. What about Western mass media? Have you ever heard about black internet or shadow internet?
So it's not different than anything, right? It's you're finding your audience. Your audience happens to be hidden under a rock somewhere. That shouldn't make a difference to you. It is still your audience. You just have a different platform of reaching it, and you just still have a different mechanism of reaching them. In the old days, 1,000 years ago, we would gather in the square outside, and there was you would go in the corner behind a tree, and you would talk about things, and you would come back, and then you would find her, and then he would find him, and you talk about. It's the same thing. It's a digital equivalent of a public square. You find your own mechanism of reaching your echo chamber, wherein other people like you talk about things that you like. You just happen to do it digitally. So it's same thing, done in a different place.
Sorry, probably I couldn't ask correctly. But just shadow internet means specific narrow points for media platforms. For example, when you enter a website of a channel, BBC, for example, you read news, and after that, in a specific chain, you can read this news. And shadow internet means that because this website can't see my IP, this website can't find me, and it can't show me the same news. What's the solution? Probably you heard about it, probably you discussed it with different European journalists.
So I use a browser called EPIC. EPIC stands for Electronic Privacy Information Center. EPIC doesn't store any cookies. It doesn't allow you to add any advertising, doesn't display your IP address. I've used it for years. So if you want to be anonymous, you can be anonymous, but only to a certain extent. As I mentioned in one of my things, there is no privacy on the web. They will find you one way or the other. If they really wanted to find you, they will find you. You can use certain things clearly to protect your privacy, as you should. I use EPIC because I just don't want 1,000 advertising cookies embedded in my browser. I just don't want them. So there are certain people who will do things beyond the point that you're making. There is also the dark web, wherein a lot of illegal activity takes place. There was one big one called the Silk Road, and all kinds of drug dealing and all kind of nasty stuff happened to that. It was shut down by the FBI. So you can hide within certain frameworks. Nobody's going to challenge me, nobody's going to slap me around because I use EPIC. My reason for using EPIC is because I don't want to be tracked, in the sense that I don't want to see. So, for example, the ad for EPIC is that it's wrong to show me ads for red polka dot underwear just because I looked at a picture. So you can find mechanisms to protect your privacy, as you should, as everybody should. But at the same time, I just think it's an impossible situation to think that you will be completely anonymous forever, or something that you do, or something that you did or will do will be hidden from an organization, an authority, a government. That just simply doesn't happen anymore. That was, I think, pre-Snowden. After the Snowden episode, there's essentially, you can just kiss privacy goodbye.
Good evening, I am Adlet. I am from the National Picture Gallery of Astana. I have a question pertaining to our topic. We know that traditional mass media like newspapers, TV, radio have translated to new formats, are using new formats, and I have a question. What do you think? Will they become as popular and multi-user facilities as social networks like Facebook? And do you think, and is it okay or not?
So in New York is the Metropolitan Museum. It's popularly known as the Met. A year and a half ago, the Met hired its very first digital officer. The Met has this amazing collection of artifacts from all around the world. So now they have what they're calling an experience app. You can take the app with you when you go into the museum, or you can experience it from like 1,000 miles away. So it's just the question essentially, and now just to add to it, with Oculus making the new virtual reality systems, some of the like really incredible. Right now it's just for gaming, but it's going to change very soon. So I think that people will be able to experience a lot more data, a lot more information, and I think that we are just sitting on the cusp of this technological revolution. wherein virtual reality is going to make your experiences of specific things so different, so vibrant, and so amazingly great that you can sit here in this room and be virtually transported to the Met in New York to experience that kind of information. So, but you can then create your own group of people, right? People like you who enjoy that kind of stuff, and you can have your own group, and you can propagate that on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can say, you know what, I saw such and such thing in the Met, and this is how it can be done. So the technology will make it viable for you, and then you as an individual will find a way to create a group and experience it. That's coming. So it's almost like if you read up in the next 2 to 3 months, you will find all these great changes happening. So I think I'm holding up you going to a party, which is really bad, because everybody should go to the party. But I wanted to thank you for your time and for your patience. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you.